When would the US stop using threats to pressure countries to follow its ideologies? Honestly, this is getting out of hand. Whenever any country does the opposite of what the United States government feels is right, the next thing we hear is that the US wants to punish that country either through finances or military intervention. If a leader is elected in a country and the leader seems to have ideas that go against US principles and interests, the next thing that happens is that he is tagged a dictator and, if possible, eliminated. Just recently, the US threatened to punish South Africa as if South Africa, which is supposed to be a sovereign country, is a student who disobeyed his teacher, and the reason for this punishment is because South Africa decided to speak against injustice and drag Israel, an ally of the United States, to court. Now, this issue is still not over, but the United States decided to show its power and threatened yet another African country, Ghana. And for what? Simply because on Wednesday, February 28th, the Parliament of Ghana passed a bill. The question is, what business does the US have with the passing of the bill? Ghana is a sovereign country, which means it can do whatever it wants and make any decision that will be beneficial to the country. But it seems the United States has forgotten this, hence the threat. So, what bill did the Ghanaian Parliament pass? And what threat did the United States issue? Let's find out. As we said earlier, on Wednesday, February 28th, the Ghanaian Parliament voted to pass a bill to severely restrict LGBTQ rights. The bill would punish those who take part in LGBTQ sexual acts, as well as those who promote the rights of gay, lesbian, or other non-conventional sexual or gender identities, with time in prison. The bill, commonly called the Anti-Gay Bill, was sponsored by Senator Sam George and has received sponsorship from a coalition comprising Christian, Muslim, and Ghanaian traditional leaders, finding substantial backing among members of parliament. Under the provision of the bill, those who take part in LGBTQ sexual acts could face imprisonment ranging from 6 months to 3 years. The bill also imposes a prison sentence of 3 to 5 years for the willful promotion, sponsorship, or support of LGBTQ+ activities. However, before this bill becomes law, it has to be validated by President Akufo-Addo. Before it becomes law, but if the president refuses, the parliament can approve it into law by a 2/3 majority. Now, following the announcement by the Ghanaian Parliament, the spokesperson of the United States Department, Matthew Miller, released a video on March 1st, 2024, where he threatened that there would be serious consequences if President Akufo-Addo assets the anti-gay bill into law. Speaking in a press conference, Matthew Miller indicated that the US government is currently in a discussion with the government of Ghana to ensure that the anti-gay bill is not passed into law. According to Miller, if the bill is passed into law, then Ghana will suffer the same consequence that Uganda is currently suffering when it passed the harshest anti-gay law in the world in 2023. Mr. Miller also added that if this bill becomes law, it would certainly have a chilling effect on foreign investment and tourism in Ghana. In essence, what Mr. Miller is trying to say is that if President Akufo-Addo dares to pass the anti-gay bill into law, then the United States would no longer offer financial assistance, also called foreign aid, to Ghana, the same way it did to Uganda. According to reports, the United States supports Ghana with financial assistance in various areas, including agriculture, malaria prevention, HIV/AIDS control, and military assistance. In fact, in 2022 alone, the United States offered the sum of $211 million to Ghana in foreign aid. So, the big question is, what will President Akufo-Addo choose? 275 parliamentary members voted for this bill, and what this means is that the majority of the people of Ghana support it. So will President Akufo-Addo cave to the pressure and threat of the United States, or he would stand his ground and keep to his word? Initially, when President Akufo first came to power, his stance on gay marriage was that he would never allow it while he was in power. However, during a press conference with the US Vice President Kamala Harris last year, the president's stance seemed to be shaky. During the press conference, he stated that the proposed legislation, packaged under the garb of family values and seeking to enact some of the worst anti-LGBTQ laws on the African continent, was a private member's bill, not legislation introduced by his government. So, If the president is already saying that the bill was not introduced by his government, do you think that he would agree to pass the bill into law? Well, the next few days will tell. However, the point is, what concerns the United States government with a bill that is about to be passed in another country? The fact that the United States supports the LGBTQ community doesn't mean that every country should support it. As Uganda President Museveni stated when he was speaking about the U.S. condemnation of the anti-gay law passed in his country, when the United States was passing into law support for the LGBTQ community, did any African country interfere? Has any African country ever protested the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, which guarantees Americans the right to bear arms? No country has interfered or protested when the United States is doing whatever it likes. So what concern is it of the U.S. that a sovereign country wants to pass the particular bill into law? This is the problem that countries have with the United States, its hegemonic attitude, and why countries are beginning to turn away from the United States and collaborate with Russia and China. Since the United States became a global power after World War II, it has tried to create a world order that reflects its values and interests by imposing its ideals, principles, and culture on other countries, similar to how the British and French governments imposed their culture on Africans. And if any country resists, its government is called undemocratic, and they are punished either through financial sanctions or military intervention. The United States government may say that the reason for its decision is to protect human rights and equality, but the truth is, it's simply a way to exercise control over countries that are dependent on them. Because think about it, if truly threatening to stop aid to Ghana because of Ghana's anti-gay law is about protecting human rights, why are they not doing the same in the Middle East? Have you ever heard that the US is threatening the UAE or Saudi Arabia about LGBTQ rights? Those rights have never been in those countries and will never be because it's their culture. Similar to the way countries in the Middle East believe in family values, it's the same way African countries believe in family values and hence denounce LGBTQ, which is against family values. However, the reason why the US seems to have a hold over African countries is because Africa is dependent on the US and the West. Countries in the Middle East are to a large extent developed and are not dependent on financial assistance from the US. So to an extent, the US can't use financial assistance to threaten them to follow its ideals and principles. Most African countries, on the other hand, are dependent on the US and other Western countries and institutions for one financial assistance or the other. This gives the US and the West in general a hold over African countries. Imagine if Ghana were completely independent and did not require any aid from the US. What would the US have to threaten Ghana with? Absolutely nothing. This is the reason why African countries need to wake up and fight for true independence. Speaking of human rights and equality, if there is any country that is the worst country to profess that it's fighting for human rights and equality, it is the United States. The United States has committed and supported more human rights abuse than any other country in the world, but has never been punished because it is also in charge of the global judicial system. The Israel-Palestinian war is a perfect example of how the US examples on human rights, yet when South Africa took Israel to court accusing it of committing genocide, the United States decided to punish South Africa. How hypocritical of them. As the Rwandan president Paul Kagame stated, it's only human rights abuse when it's committed by other nations. But when it's the US or any other country of the West, nobody says anything. When will it all end? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video.